Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, Mining Affected Communities United in Action, MACUA, has approached the Constitutional Court in its fight for illegal miners occupying an abandoned gold mine in Stilfontein to be rescued. This comes after its previous legal bid at the Pretoria High Court failed. The organisation has now made an urgent application for direct access and leave to appeal directly to the Apex Court to compel the government to speed up the operation to bring illegal miners back to surface. MACUA Executive Director Christopher Rutledge joins me now in studio. Good evening, Christopher. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much, Mfundo, for having us.
No, it's a pleasure to have you with us. So you've resolved to go this route, seeking direct access in the Constitutional Court. Why the decision to go to the Court of Last Instance when you still had the opportunity to petition the High Court, bring in an application for leave to appeal, or go to the SCA?
Well, Mfundo, I think in the normal course of events, that would be what is required of us to do. But in the current situation, which is an emergency, we unfortunately don't have the luxury of going to different courts to appeal the process. So we are, and because it's a constitutional matter, it deals with 3 or 4, maybe 5 constitutional issues which are impacted by the crisis. And more than that, I think in information which we just submitted to the court today, we are saying and we have shown that there is a dire situation. People are absolutely dying. As you know, they have resorted to eating human flesh to survive. And the situation is absolutely horrendously drastic and urgent. So,
I'm going to touch on that specific aspect around the possibility of them having resorted to cannibalism. But before that, when just browsing through your papers, I saw you were quite direct. You said what you request is that within 2 hours of the court granting your orders, you want respondent 1 to 5 to begin to bring in humanitarian aid. You're not saying that they shouldn't block the bringing in of humanitarian aid.
Yes.
You're saying they need to be the ones that provide the humanitarian aid. Just talk to us about this order that you seek.
So there's a number of things that has happened over this short period now. The one is that as an organization, as the community, we are struggling to get enough funds to be able to support the food that needs to go down, and then also the equipment to pull miners out. So, you know, as a community-based organization and as the community of Stilfontein who are impoverished, it's very difficult to get that funds. But we are trying our best. The fact is it's not enough because our recent, the most recent indication is that there is still at least 900 people down there, and we are able to extract maybe 2 to 3 a day.
So you now want the
we're
court...
not able to. But also more importantly, what has happened on Friday last week is that the police has damaged the pulley system that the community has been using to extract miners, despite the fact that we
How did that come about?
This is very suspicious from our side in the sense that we explained to the police and the Buffelsfontein mine graders that were there to flatten the surface. We explained to them that there are certain key areas that need to remain intact in order for us to use the police system. The police agreed, the grader operators agreed, and we also on that Friday asked the police to allow us the opportunity to send down a cell phone so that we can actually record what's happening in the mine, and we can bring that cell phone up, and then both the police and ourselves have a clear idea of what's happening. After we made that request, suspiciously, the pulley system was damaged, and we now can no longer use it. So we have absolutely no way to get down to the mine other than now asking the state to utilize its resources to bring those miners to the top. But more importantly, we're asking the state to do that because in our papers we're arguing that the state created this situation, that it was through their actions that people are dying down below. It is through their actions that people cannot get access to food. So if the police are going to go in and do an operation, they should have thought about what's going to happen in this situation. How do we then address the situation? And the police have just not dealt with that. So now we have people dying in numbers And the human rights conditions are absolutely horrendous. And so we have to do something urgently.
So now at this point, when you want the courts to compel them to provide humanitarian aid and to drive this operation to retrieve the miners, and I use the word retrieve because you know that the debate is still out there where some say they need to be rescued
It's not a
versus
debate
with
at
them.
all.
But you would still say that has been a conversation, at least on the part of the police, where they're still of the view firmly that those who remain underground do so willingly. Well, but nevertheless, they have consistently expressed.
The police haven't disputed or provided any alternative information to the facts that we have put before the court. And we have put various facts, including an affidavit from the owners of the mine, an affidavit from Harmony Gold Mine, an affidavit from various miners who have been down there before, an affidavit from somebody who's just come up from the mine now, and 3 other people who've just come up from. So we've put an extensive amount of evidence before the court saying that there is no alternative.
But I'm sure you've heard Nat Joyce just this past week, where they indicated that just last week when we saw a number of miners resurfacing, they used that to say, now this lends credence to our assertion that actually the miners can come to surface, but they choose not to do so. I'm sure you saw that statement by Nat Joyce.
Yes, look, I mean, the thing is that we have also explained to the court, and we put information before the court which suggests that the exit 10 that they are referring to,
the Margaret Shaft.
No, Margaret Shaft is a completely different kettle of fish. So Harmony Gold has confirmed that if you are in Shaft 11, there's no ways you can get access to Margaret Shaft because the tunnels are blocked. So that is the one thing. The only possible way for them to escape is through Shaft 10. Now, Shaft 10 requires that you've got to climb up. There's a thin pole, a rickety, rusted pole that goes right to the top. So as a miner, you have to try and pull yourself up this pole. Given the state that they've been without food since August of this year, they, by all accounts, are emaciated, they're weak, they have no more energy. So those who have come out by some miracle. The fact of the matter is there's 900 people there. There are currently at least 18 more bodies down there. The situation is extremely dire. The last person that's come out, the police refused to let him speak to his lawyers for 3 weeks. And that person has indicated to us that when they pulled him out, one, there's no other alternative, that they are not there because they want to be there, that they are dying in numbers, and that there is no other alternative. That is the only way. So we've put this information and the evidence before them. And besides the fact that police are saying people can exit somewhere else, they're not giving us any proof that that is in fact the case.
Speaking on this particular individual that you say was denied the opportunity to speak to a lawyer, this is among some of your orders.
That's right.
You're requesting specifically that respondent number 3, I believe that is the police minister, not to deny the lawyers for human rights access to some of these miners that have come to surface. That is correct. That suggests to me that you guys allege that they have been denied the opportunity to access these miners. Yes. How so?
Yeah, this is the thing. So Clement was pulled out of the mine by the community rescue team on the 9th of December. He was immediately arrested and taken to, I think, Buffelsfontein, Hartbeesfontein police station. The community and the legal representative went to that station so that they could consult with him, as is his right. And they sent them from this station to that station, from this person to that person. For 3 weeks, we couldn't find him. It's only on Tuesday that he came out. And we're now able to get the full extent, the full truth of what is happening there.
So he
and that is why the
police
have been trying to hide him away.
So he appeared in court without representation?
He appeared in court with legal aid.
Okay.
And he was given 500 Rand bail.
All right. So then beyond this now, you've also cited Harmony Gold. You've also cited Buffelsfontein mine.
Correct.
To what extent do you believe that they should be held responsible for what has happened here?
Look, Buffelsfontein mine and the Department of Mineral and Resources, they have the key responsibilities here. Buffelsfontein mine say they stopped mining in 2015. For the last 10 years, Buffelsfontein mine and Department of Mineral and Resources have failed to close that mine. They have allowed the situation to happen because there is no fences, there is nothing that stops anybody. If you walk on that site, it's like you're walking on an open veldt. There's nothing to say that this area is a mining area, you shouldn't be here, nothing of that sort. So they've allowed people to go down and mine. And then suddenly they come and they just close everything and now people are dying. They should have thought about that. So they are ultimately responsible, both the mining company and the Department of Mineral Resources. And that's part of what we're asking the Constitutional Court, is to say that these people are responsible for what has happened. They cannot now wash their hands and say, well, those people must just die and come out.
Mm-hmm. What of the police's assertion that in this instance, they don't want to send the wrong message, that they are seen to be aiding the continuation of illegal activities, that if they're going to continue to allow for food to be sent down, then essentially you're going to have a continuation of the illegal activities here, because I don't think perhaps it's being disputed that they are illegal miners at this point.
Look, it is absolutely disputed that providing humanitarian aid and food is adding to lawlessness. In fact, quite the opposite. The Pretoria High Court, in a different judgment, has said that the failure of the police to provide food to those who are trapped underground is in itself a violation of our constitution, is undermining the law. So if anybody is undermining the law here in Stilfontein, then it is the police and the state. And this is what we ask in the Constitutional Court. And if the Constitutional Court finds in our favor, then it will be very clear that they are the ones who are undermining the law, because South Africa is a constitutional state. They cannot hope and wish that they can be an Israeli government that can just murder people without any consequences. This is murder. What they are doing is they are sentencing these people to death. Mm-hmm. People who are only being charged with trespassing can only really be charged with trespassing, as with the case with Clement. Kept for 3 weeks in detention, but he is released on 500 rand bail because the only charge they can really hope to prove is that he trespassed.
Mm-hmm. And what of the statement by the Northwest government, at least the MEC, on times that we've engaged him? He said they simply do not have the funds to carry out such an operation because it would be far too expensive. I mean, some have attempted to compare it to what we saw in Sabi in Mpumalanga, but then it's always stressed that it's too further down. It would be a costly exercise. What of that?
So the MEC said about 7.8 million. The government in their papers and in their submissions have said 11 million. Whatever the case may be. 11 million in the sense that the police have got for tackling illegal mining operations. They have a kitty of over 1.8 billion rand, I think it is the number. I discussed this with Clement on the last occasion. There is billions of rands available. So if you're telling me we cannot avail 7 million rand to save the lives of people, unsentenced, not convicted, they are still innocent according to the law, until they come to a court of law and are then sentenced, then we can see what needs to be done. But while those people are there, while the state has created this situation, they have a responsibility to deal with it. Mm-hmm. It's one minister's salary. You know what I mean?
What happens if the Con Court doesn't rule in your favor? Where to from there?
Look, that will be a very sad day in South Africa if that is the case, because then hundreds of people are absolutely going to die. So we're hoping that the Constitutional Court will have more rational thought than that, and they will see the facts for what it is. But if that doesn't survive, or if that doesn't succeed, then what else can we do? We'll have to continue to campaign, continue to mobilize and appeal to South Africans to come to the aid of those who are stuck and those who are denied the human rights.
Mm-hmm. And then just in closing, what is the situation today?
Today, for the since last weekend Friday, there's been no food being sent down. People are dying. It is an absolutely urgent matter, and we don't have a single day to waste. In the accounts that we do present, the tales are harrowing. People are dying, and we have to act with urgency.
Christopher, thank you very much for joining us as always. That was Christopher Rutledge from MACUA. He's Executive Director, speaking to us on their decision to seek direct access of the Constitutional Court on the illegal miners situation. After the break, though, we speak to DA on their Gauteng High Court, or at least the matter of the Gauteng High Court declaring unconstitutional and invalid the city's policy to have 8 bodyguards for the mayor, despite COGTA having set the limit at 2 bodyguards. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us on Face the Nation. So the Gauteng High Court in Johannesburg has declared the City of Johannesburg's controversial VIP protection policy unconstitutional and invalid. In its current form, the policy allows for 10 bodyguards for the mayor, 8 for the speaker, and as many as 5 for other members of the mayoral committee, as well as committee chairs. DA Johannesburg caucus leader Belinda Kayser-Echo-zo-njoku says the DA raised their concerns inside the council and cautioned that the policy violates the constitutional upper limits. She joins me live via Teams now to discuss this further. Good evening, Belinda. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. So you had brought this application before the court seeking that they declare the 8 bodyguards for a mayor, among other orders, unconstitutional. They ruled in your favor. Your reaction?
Good evening, Fundo, and good evening to the listeners. We are relieved and we are vindicated on behalf of the residents of Johannesburg. Obviously, this is not something that we are taking lightly in a city where we are struggling with a lot of service delivery concerns and issues like that. This is a very, very landmark. It's a landmark judgment for us, and we are very grateful that the rule of law has once again won.
But the judge, though, did stress, Belinda, that the limit set by COGTA of 2 bodyguards could be exceeded only if recommendation from SABC following a threat assessment. And the judge went as far as suspending his orders for 6 weeks, allowing for council to provide a threat assessment. And with many cases that we've reported on as well, even of city officials being killed when perhaps investigating tenders that were awarded without following due process. Some would believe politicians such as a mayor would probably be vulnerable or exposed as well. So you don't believe they could produce an assessment justifying the current number of bodyguards?
When we raised this initially in council, we had requested for the city and the officials to provide the threat risk analysis, firstly. And secondly, we have also requested them to provide us with proof that they have indeed requested for the threat risk analysis to be done in case there was some sort of delay. None of these were provided, and I think the judge has been more than fair and actually being quite gracious, giving the city additional time to provide for that threat risk analysis, to either be providing it in case it happened in between the 15th of November and now. But also, Fundo, I don't believe that the city would be able to provide that because from February 2024, they were given an opportunity to provide this prior to us even taking it to court. And we've even taken 2 months, from March when this was passed in council up to May when we first served them with papers. None of these were given. They also haven't provided it in court. So we're not holding our breath that they are going to be able to provide this. But we understand, obviously we over a period where people are in recess at the same time, and also because of what you're mentioning, that there's circumstances. So we understand it, but we're not holding our breath because we don't believe there's any intention for the city to comply with the rule of law, given the opportunities they were given to comply.
Now, council adopted this policy back in March 2024. And the will of the majority prevailed, I suppose. There are those that have consistently criticized the practice of challenging political outcomes in court, almost rendering the legislature or political processes useless. What would you say to some that still hold that view, that here you had a proper process that was political, there was an outcome perhaps that didn't favor the Democratic Alliance's views, whether right or wrong, but nevertheless there was a process. But they then hold a view that perhaps some of these matters that have taken place should not be taken to the court.
It's quite unfortunate that there is still people who have that view that proper process have been taken, because clearly proper process has not been taken. And politics and any policy of any sphere of government cannot override the Constitution. And the fact that this policy itself, not only if I haven't even gone into the details of what the concerns we had with the policy itself, but the fact that the policy that was brought to council, firstly, they've already deployed VIP protection without even providing proof that they have done the threat risk analysis. Secondly, the fact that they have gone beyond what is allowed in the constitutional upper limits that deals with the tools of trade for public office bearers. It's unfortunate if people still think that politics and numbers is what getting us here. This is an issue of governance and the fact that the Constitution provides for things to be done properly. Also, policy provides for the things to be done properly. It cannot be that politicians are using their numbers, their numerical advantage to steamroll decisions that are unlawful, unconstitutional, and invalid through council. And if it is correct, then it should not be able to be challenged in court.
All right. So you sternly hold the view that political outcomes should be challenged if you believe there is a constitutionality question that needs to be answered. Thank you very much, Belinda, for joining us. All right, thank you very much for joining us this evening. That's DA's Johannesburg caucus leader Belinda Kayser-Echo-zo-njoku speaking to us post their court win. After the break, we speak to COGTA Minister Belinda Hlabisa on the announcement that they'll be cancelling the contracts of community work program beneficiaries who are age 55 and above. A lot have already raised strong concerns about this. Stay with us. We'll be speaking to him in just a bit. Welcome back to Face the Nation. I'm Fundo Mabalani, standing in for Clement Manyatela this evening. Now, the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs has terminated contracts of people aged 55 years and older. The department said this was due to budget cuts and other related issues. CPW is a government initiative that provides temporary employment for people of working age while they search for permanent jobs. Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Belinda Hlabisa joins me via Teams now to discuss this further. Good evening, Minister. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. So you've announced the cancellation of the contracts for those 55 years and above. Just talk us through the reasoning behind the cancellation and specifically how you arrived at a decision that those affected should be the cohort 55 and above.
Good evening, Nomfundo, and compliments of the new year to yourself and all the viewers of SABC program this evening.
Same to you.
Nomfundo, in life, there are eventualities that you cannot avoid at the end of the day. And that is part of life. Then to come up clear on this one, the Community Works Program employs 255,000 people. These people are not employed on a permanent basis. They are employed to acquire skills and exit the programs once they have acquired skills to carry on their own, either to run small businesses or to do certain work and accumulate money on their own. The unfortunate scenario, last year, the cabinet, which was eventually announced by the National Treasury, there was a budget cut across all departments in South Africa. This program was affected by the budget cut with an amount of 400 million rand. Now, the law does not allow the department to spend the money it doesn't have. In April, there was an attempt to release those employees who are 60 years and above, because most of them do receive the pension grant. Unfortunately, it could not be done in April. An attempt was made in September to release the 60 and above, and there was no enough time to notify them. And now, if we continue, keep the 255,000 employees, we are not going to be able to pay them in February and March. Mm-hmm. That is why, therefore, we felt we rather start exiting those who are 55 years and above, because they can go and apply for pension grant, but some of them already receive the pension grant, but were kept in this program because it is not a permanent employee, but a program. We prefer to leave young people who still have energy and to learn more skills to be released once they have acquired those skills.
Minister, granted, you say there are eventualities that cannot be avoided. But when we speak of those that are specifically 55, they wouldn't yet be eligible to actually get a pension payout. So what happens in that respect for those? Because I'm sure you saw the statement by Save South Africa. They felt that this was grossly unfair. They don't know how the decision was arrived at, because according to them, their view is that those who are 55 actually, in fact, beyond this program will struggle to find work because they're essentially older.
If you terminate those who are 60 years and above, you're still going to remain with a number that you cannot pay the salaries for the month of February and March. Now, you need to make a choice. If you relieve a person who is 23 years, who still have an energy and still more years to contribute in the program, you will have to choose between the 23 or 30-year-old and the 55-year-old. Mind you, this was not a permanent employment, it was a program. The 55 and above, those who will not be eligible for grant, the pension grant, but they are closer than if you release a 30-year-old person who is still going to be at home for the next 30 years until reach the age of pension age.
But you still argue, Minister, pardon me for interjecting there, but you still argue that if anything, it's still not a permanent job, it's temporary. So again, many would say it was a difficult decision to take, but what they seek is a reasonable justification that if they say a 55-year-old still cannot get a pension and a 55-year-old is not one that can easily be employed as opposed to perhaps a 23-year-old, they say then it would not be justified in that respect. But granted, everybody appreciates the budgetary constraints, but what they're seeking here is a reason, or at least the justification that what was the criteria used, because 55 versus 60 can still not get a pension.
Nomfundo, as I said, in life there is an eventuality that you will not avoid at the end of the day. If you go in terms of age, people who are closer to exit the program are 55 years and above, who has acquired skills which can help them to start their own businesses. And you know, if they are unfortunate to start those businesses, they are closer to apply for pension grant. But if you release a 30-year-old, you know, if he is unable to start a business or get employment, he will be unemployed for the next 30 years. So now, from comparative speaking, unfortunate as it is, the 55 years and above, under prevailing circumstances, became the only resort that we could do in order to be able not to compel all of them not to get paid in the month of February and March. Unfortunately, this is a budget cut which is experienced by other departments, and unfortunately in other departments there are also employees who will be affected, as it has happened in this case.
Now, is this matter still open for discussion with relevant stakeholders, or this has been finalized now? There will be no opportunity to engage you further?
We are still engaging the National Treasury. We wrote a letter to request him that it is unfortunate because we can't spend the money we don't have. There will be people to be released. Can there be a consideration? But now, in terms of giving a notice, we had to go ahead to give a notice that under prevailing circumstances, this is the eventuality that we will have if the National Treasury can come back with a revised funding that will allow these people to be kept in the system. We will definitely keep them. But as for now, the position is we are short in terms of 400 million rand. Unless we get this money from National Treasury, there is no way to keep people whom you can't pay.
All right, Minister, thank you very much for your time this evening. That was Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Hlabisa there, confirming that indeed this is a notice that they have sent to those who are currently employed and that they have a shortfall of 400 million. After the break, we speak to politics reporter, senior reporter at that, Ndebu Mukobo, on what we can expect on the political front this year. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Face the Nation with myself, Mfundo Mabalani, standing in for Clement Manyatela this evening. The question we're asking tonight is, City of Johannesburg's VIP policy has been ruled unconstitutional and invalid by the court. Was this ruling necessary to curb excessive spending on politicians' security? Let's look at some of your tweets. All right, Wacheng Mohoje says, good evening, Mfundo. Yes, good evening, Wacheng. Yes, the ruling was necessary and makes sense. We're speaking about a mayor here, not a president. 8 bodyguards for a person of his stature is a waste of taxpayers' money. Mohale says, greetings, Mfundo. Greetings, Mohale. Today's High Court judgment is a resounding victory for democratic accountability in SA. It sends a strong message to ANC politicians that they do not have an automatic right or entitlement to bodyguards at the expense of the taxpayer. Well done to the DA. All right, some very interesting views there from a number of you. It seems everybody's in agreement, or at least happy that such a judgment came out. A bit earlier on, of course, speaking to the Democratic Alliance, also celebrating their victory. Let's listen to some of your voice notes.
Sam Alekotriko Pisumfundo Dumela. You cannot spend the money you don't have to please people who do not even care about the needs of the residents. There is water shortage in Joburg and nobody cares. Let this money be redirected for service delivery. People in Joburg walk on sewage and they even believe it's normal when money is misused. Happy New Year, Mfudo.
From Thokozani Nkosi. I think the decision was very clear and perfectly, and it suits politicians. Even if politicians do not have even one bodyguard, they deserve it. They serve in community. They are too high. They don't even listen to us at most of the time because we give them too much power. They should be paying from their salary. They earn a lot of fat salary, yet we're paying for this bodyguard nonsense. Thank you.
All right, some strong views there saying they actually don't even deserve one bodyguard. They should come to the level of ordinary citizens because they serve citizens. Very interesting views. Do keep them coming. Well, we shift our focus to this story now. The ANC lost its outright electoral majority in South Africa for the first time since the dawn of democracy in last year's general elections. At the heart of the ANC's electoral decline was the party's former president, Jacob Zuma, who ditched the liberation movement and endorsed the newly formed MK party. The massive loss of electoral support in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng contributed to the ANC dipping below 50% nationally for the first time. Party officials will at the end of January decide on the fate of KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng structures. To discuss the political year ahead, I'm joined in studio by SABC News senior politics reporter Ndebu Mukobo. Good evening, Ndebu. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Good evening, Mfundo, and good evening to the viewers at home.
No, it's wonderful to have you with us to look at the political year ahead. There's always something happening in politics, but it starts every year with the ANC, with its January 8th statement. But this time around, there's quite a lot that's happening because you've got the disbandment conversation that started last year. It was held in abeyance, and at least the Secretary General indicated that the NEC would be the one to make the final decision on this matter after the NWC had recommended. So these are some of the issues that they'll have to tackle now at the beginning of the year. Talk to us about this.
Yes, in fact, the ANC will start from next week. It will be having all its, not rank and file membership, but its top brass going to the Western Cape for the January 8 statement. And that January 8 statement will then be followed by the NWC meeting. The NWC meeting that will sort of decide what is likely to happen with the provincial structures of KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. And everything emerging from that NWC will then be fed into the National Executive Committee meeting. And of course, that would be followed by the NEC COGTA. That's towards the end of January. A decision will then be taken on that front in terms of what should happen with the KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. And after that, the president will then have to go to Parliament to deliver his first State of the Nation address. That would be the State of the Nation address informed by the collective of the GNU. That statement will be watched again with the hawk's eye because the president will be delivering the State of the Nation address for the first time, informed by the GNU collective.
And I suppose even the January 8th statement right now would be coming at a time in the era of a GNU, a message that must always sort of deliver hope to the members of the ANC at a time when now they've dipped below 50%. So quite a lot of addresses that the president will have to actually deliver in a different political dynamic. But there's been a lot of interest around the possible disbandment of KZN and Gauteng. And it seems there are those commentators that have said if the ANC decides to go the route of disbanding, it would be a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. Is this the case, or those are just raising unnecessary alarm or exaggerating the consequences of possibly disbanding these two provinces?
It's not an exaggeration, Mfundo. If you look at what Begmtolo said, the Provincial Secretary of KwaZulu-Natal, that if you dare disband KZN only because it performed poorly, then you need to look at yourself and ask what really informs your decision. Because if you look at what happened in KZN, it's not entirely the weakness of the province on its own. Some people are saying the ANC lost because there was a formation of MK. But you must understand the formation of MK. What informs the formation of MK? It was because former President Jacob Zuma was expelled by the National Executive Committee of the ANC. It's not the Provincial Executive Committee of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal that expelled him and forced him to form that party. Jacob Zuma's differences with the current president are political. If they are deemed personal, then the ANC has to tell both two leaders that it's not about them, it's about the ANC.
But the ANC had felt that as part of their renewal program, as a start, they felt that they couldn't support the former president in all his court matters, and they had issued a directive to the KZN, because that's where it started. They had issued that directive to the KZN PC that there can be no support, at least wearing ANC regalia, of the former president. And this was informed by the renewal program.
And the KZN provincial structures didn't really go to court and support the former president. The ANC decided to deal with him at national level, and he left the party. And after leaving the party, he formed his own party. And that party cost the ANC, the 14% that the MK party got. That 14% could have gone to the ANC. And if you take the 40% that the ANC gathered, it would have been around 54% of the votes. So I blame a provincial structure for that. That's a national matter. So if you dare disband, well, they will be disbanding at their own peril.
It will be quite interesting to see what becomes the decision of the NEC, or even just the recommendation of the NWC before that official outcome. Then to the other question around the succession debate. I'm sure you saw that statement that was published by the Secretary General on the 29th of December, saying the succession debate is a non-starter. You know, when reading that statement in Tebu, the tone suggested that the Secretary General is of the view that there is this elusive outsider who is being mischievous and trying to almost distract and inserting the conversation around a succession debate within the ANC, that this is not something that emanates from the party itself. But this is a script that has played out so many times where you have perhaps on the second term of an ANC leader, there would be a conversation. I even remember in 2012, as far back as 2012, when you had Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma being elected as AU Commission chair. Some had even started a conversation as early as that this specific appointment or election would up her profile. She would return back to the country and probably run for president after Zuma. So is this not something that consistently starts within the ANC itself? There's no one mischievous outside of the party.
No, absolutely, there's no one mischievous. I think one hiccup or one disadvantage, one thing that is disadvantages the ANC when it comes to managing the succession debate is that there hasn't been any succession plan in the ANC. There are many political parties who are like-minded, like the ANC, for instance, in the region, SADC region, for instance. If you look at former liberation movements, MPLA in Angola, if you look at Frelimo in Mozambique, if you look at Chama Chama Pinduza, for instance, in Tanzania, those political parties worked hand in glove with the ANC, and they've got succession plan. And I don't understand why the ANC is not sharing script or is not learning from those political parties. They've got their own differences, internal differences in terms of who should lead the party, but they managed to contain those differences. And I think the ANC should have learned from those political parties. They normally go to their conferences. Their conferences don't become a matter of life and death like it's happening in the ANC.
But what happens when you have elders such as the former president Thabo Mbeki stating that you don't want a party to preoccupy itself with succession or leadership because it defeats the purpose? What they were designed for or created for or established for was to serve citizens. So it means they discourage this conversation around succession because they don't want the members to be self-serving and say, focus on service, less on who will become the next leader.
Yes, they're trying to contain or to put a lead on the succession debate because they don't have their succession plan. If you have a succession plan, everyone would know that when, for instance, President Cyril Ramaphosa leaves, who's going to be the president? In Namibia, it happened in Namibia. Already when President Hage Geingob left, they knew who's going to be the next president. But in South Africa, it's different. I mean, in the ANC, it's different, despite the fact that the organization boasts over 112, 113 years of existence. So that's one problem. But I think it would be foolhardy, really, for the ANC to think of succession or to talk about who's going to lead the party while they still have to overcome the hurdle of winning the local government elections. So I think the Secretary General was spot on. I think former President Mbeki is right to really discourage that, because for now they should be seized with what is that? What are the tangible economic benefits?
But will they heed the call? Will those members heed the call, those that are ambitious, those that want to prop up a specific leader of their choice at this point? Do you think just reading that statement, it was strongly worded, of course, but will they heed the call, or the conversation will still happen behind closed doors? It was.
I think Secretary General, the ANC Secretary General is one person who shoots from the hip. And he has said that during the last NEC, or when they were having the meeting, I think the last NEC, and when they were discussing again the disbandment or the incapacitating of the two provincial structures, he mentioned that he's going to be hard on anyone who speaks about a succession, because for now they should be focusing on really building strong ANC structures on the ground, so that those structures are appealing when they had to go to the elections. So anyone who dares talking about succession, I think he's going to be dealt with severely by the Secretary General. The man shoots from the hip.
The NGC is coming up this year as well. It's essentially a review of their implementation of their policies and all other issues. Most certainly quite a lot will come up pertaining to their electoral loss last year.
Indeed. I mean, if you, for instance, if they happen to disband the NEC, I mean the PEC of KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, that will cascade into the national, that debate will then head to the National General Council. The National General Council, it's all about the review of the policy implementation, the resolutions that were adopted in 2022, but it's likely to come there if they disband the two provincial structures. And of course, I mean, it will be again really foolhardy of the ANC not to reflect on the capacity of the National Executive Committee. That National Executive Committee has cost the ANC elections in 2024. The top 7 officials, obviously they'll have to reflect on the capabilities of these two structures, the NEC, the entire NEC, and of course the entire top 7 officials.
And then to the IFP, they'll be having their 50th anniversary without their founding leader, Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who passed away. And beyond that, we hear of the electoral conference that will take place. Hlabisa could possibly be challenged by Ntuli. We also hear of the dark horse that is Reverend Thulasizwe Buthelezi. Just talk to us about the dynamics there in the IFP.
Yes, the IFP will be holding its elective conference in August, to be precise. They said towards the end of August. And we know that, it will be the first time that they celebrate in the 50th. They will also be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the party. And those celebrations will be without the founding president, Dr. Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who is now late. And we know that, again, they will go to their elective conference. You will understand, at some point, Dr. Buthelezi anointed Mr. Velinkosi Hlabisa. And really the succession was seamless. The handover was seamless. And now that he's no longer there. There were people who were opposed to that, but because of his authority in the party, he dealt with any sort of differences that was emerging. And again, when they go to this conference, obviously Ntuli is seen as someone who can contest that election, contest the incumbent.
But true to form, when quizzed on that, he said, no, I'm very comfortable being the premier here in KwaZulu-Natal. I have no ambitions to be a national leader.
Yes, because, he got a blessing from the IFP leadership to become the premier in KZN. So if he dares challenge Velinkosi Hlabisa, then obviously there will be that mistrust, and I think he will try to manage that. But again, there's Thulasizwe Buthelezi, who is then seen as someone who can throw his head in the ring towards the conference. All that remains to be seen. But I think Velinkosi Hlabisa will emerge as the party president when it happens. And of course, again, maybe the Action SA is also going to its elective conference towards around October, November. They haven't really come up with the exact date, but that is likely to happen.
No, that's quite interesting, especially because they had been criticized for the longest time that they still had members that were actually not elected. So it will be interesting.
Just like the MK party.
Well, the MK party is slightly newer than them. They just turned 1. But if we look at the EFF on the calendar, politics-wise, 2024, there was a talk of a great exodus. And Julius Malema was quick to say it was not an exodus. You had a few leaders that left the party, but there's still some who hold the view that possibly there'll be others that leave post that conference that they had, the NPA.
And I tend to agree with him. There wasn't really an exodus, really. There were a few members who left the party, and notable figures, for instance, if we think of Floyd Chibambo, who was very close ally, and of course the party's intellect. It's him and Advocate Dalimpofu who left, whom I say had, I think, a strong following on their backyard. If they left the party, one could...
And they were founding members as opposed to Mzwane Lemanyi, or when you speak of Advocate Busiwe
Mkhwebane, for instance. So that's why at some point I said, I think they're just trying to glorify the people who left the party. But the two people that you can say, indeed, they've created a serious dent on the EFF. It's Dalimpofu and, of course, Floyd Chibambo, immensely so Floyd Chibambo, because he's the founding guy with Julius Malema. But I think going forward, the EFF, it's going to struggle a bit because it has failed really to consolidate or maybe to smarten its relationship with anybody that has got some anti-GNU sentiments. So that's one problem. The EFF together with the MK party, they've got almost around 25% of the votes. If they work together, they can do something to pose or even to hold the GNU accountable. But the MK alone as the official opposition, I don't think so.
All right, interesting times on the political front. Thank you very much, Ntebo, for your insights. That was SABC News senior politics reporter Ntebo Mokobo speaking to us there. And that's where we leave it for this evening. Enjoy your evening further. Good night.